Graphing for solving quadratics, we're looking where they cross the x-axis. It is extremely inefficient to do it that way. What's nice about using graphing to solve a quadratic is if I did allow you to use your calculators for stuff, I would show you how you can find intercepts and stuff like that. As that does come around and we start to work more with the calculator, I will start to show you how those little trick thingies work. Right now, after that we did factoring. You guys all know how to factor. We've done it over and over and over and over again. We've done solving the equations, so that's part of factoring. What we did last week where you had to solve work backwards, you take square roots. That's another way of doing it. The reason that you were able to solve and take a square root is because all of those terms in parentheses were perfect square trinomials. Okay? That's how you were able to do that. What happens if you don't have that? Well, completing the square allows you to do that. Solving the equations working backwards when you get those plus minuses and stuff is ridiculously simple. Factoring, kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. Completing the square is going to allow us to do it real fast and efficient. But it's a process, and it's weird if you haven't seen it before. What we want to do here is take a problem that looks like this, x squared plus 10x minus 3, and we want to solve it. Okay? If I'm looking at it right now, we're trying to think, well, what times what is negative 3 add together to get 10? There's nothing. Okay? There's nothing. Which means we could have imaginary solutions. We could have no solutions. We don't know. So what we do is we set it up to complete the square. We want to create junk square because you can take the square root of both sides. Ooh, a calculator. Oh, that is a super fancy one. I know. That's an AP calc one. All right. Thank you. What is that? Yeah, this is the really, really expensive one. It's the cast version of the Inspire. This one is...
I guess you better take it away from them.
We will.
Really?
No.
Oh, that's your mean.
So let's take this problem here. And have any of you guys done this before?
No.
No?
I can't.
Okay. What I want you to remember is that we're trying to get... We want to get this.
Junk.
We want to get junk squared. We want to turn this into a perfect square. Here's the process. First thing you always do is move C. And here's what I do. Blank. I put a blank there. And the reason why I put a blank there is because it's going to force me to do this. I'm going to add something to both sides. Because if I add the same thing to both sides of an equation, doesn't that equation stay balanced?
Mm-hmm.
By putting it in those little blank spots, it'll force you to remember to do that. All right. Second step, take half of B. What's half of 10?
5.
5. What's 5 squared?
5.
And that's what you add to both sides. Half of B and square it, add that value to both sides of the equation. If I add 25 to both sides, it stays the same, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now take a look at what we've done. What times what is 25? You add together to get 10. And 5. You've created a perfect square.
Oh, no.
This value, this half of B, whether it's positive or negative, always goes in the parentheses term. Now this has to equal 28.
Why 28?
What's 3 plus 25? Your mind has just been blown, I think, Kobe.
Yeah, what are we
You are looking at it going, what? All right, stick with me here. Because now, how do you solve this problem from what we did a couple days ago? You square root it. Very good. You get 2 root 7. So you have x plus 5 will equal plus or minus 2 root 7. So your solutions here would be x equals negative 5 plus or minus 2 root 7.
What?
It is a very easy process as you go through it. Trust me, guys, we'll do plenty of them. So when we're doing this, remember, we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Half of b is what winds up in the parentheses. So b over 2 always goes there. When you square it, that's what gets added to both sides. It's the same process over and over and over again. Okay, it's the same thing over and over again.
Let's try this one more time. I'm
Oops,
just a
why is
little
this-
confused.
all right.
Where are all these going to?
Let's try another one. X squared minus 16x plus 76. Very first thing we do is move c. How do I move a positive 76? I
Minus.
subtract it. So I wind up with x squared minus 16x plus blank equals negative 76 plus blank. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
What's half of negative 16? Notice I'm keeping the sign with it. Negative 16, half of that is negative 8. So what goes in my parentheses?
Negative 8.
Negative 8. So it becomes x minus 8, quantity squared, equals, well, what's negative 8 squared? 64. I add 64 to both sides. So then I square it, and I add it here and there. Because now you've created a perfect square trinomial, because negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. And if you add them together, you get negative 16. You're creating the perfect square to solve out real fast. So what's negative 76 plus 64? Negative 12, very good. What do I do? Square root it, very good. So we have x minus 8 equals plus or minus
2i.
2I root 3, very good. Remember, because it was negative.
You know what? I was close enough.
And then just add the 8. Yes, ma'am.
So you take half of the and you square, and that's what you add.
Yep. Yep. Every time. Every single time. Your answer is x equals 8 plus or minus 2I root 3.
Wait, why do we square it though? Like, what's the reason for that?
Because you're creating this.
So we're squaring the negative 8 to do that?
Yep. Because what happens is this trinomial, what times what's positive 64 to add together to get negative 16, it's x minus 8, x minus 8. That creates jump squared. And to get rid of the squared, you just square root. It is a very, very fast way to solve quadratic. Okay? You can use this method anytime.
Does that mean c will always be positive?
Not necessarily.
Because you will be taking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought like original. I thought you were talking about original.
No, no.
Yes, when you square it, it will always be positive.
Right.
It'll be a minus if the second one's minus, or plus if the second one's positive. B is positive. Let's do another one. X squared plus 4x plus 1 is 0. First step is to move the c. Very good. X squared plus 4x plus blank is negative 1 plus blank. And now go to the next one. What's half of 4?
2.
2. So half of 4 is 2. It's positive, so it goes in my parentheses as x plus 2. I square it, and I get
4.
4. And I add that to both sides. See how fast that is? Now what's negative 1 plus 4? 3. So it's not as scary as it looked. And those are solutions. negative 2 plus or minus root 3.
Do that for every problem?
Yeah, you can do this for any quadratic. If the leading term coefficient of A is 1, it gets a little messy if it's not. I mean, I will do that, but for right now, I'm giving you guys one. So, let's look at one that isn't.
There we go.
In this case, if you think about factoring, what would be the first rule of factoring? Yeah, and so you just divide everything by 3 and then go on from there. So why don't you guys take a minute and do that one on your own, and we'll come back to the funkier. There will be funkier ones later, but take a minute and do this one on your own.
Like ones that don't divide plus followed by.
Yeah. Let's see how we did. So, what is it?
The answer?
Oh no, I thought.
I think
We're talking about medical lecture.
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you said Cutler broke his collarbone. I'm like, oh.
Romo broke his collarbone.
Oh, I heard that. All right. Anyway, divide everything by 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have x squared minus 2x plus 4 is 0. Complete the square. Subtract 4. Oops. Half of negative 2 is?
1.
Negative 1. What drops my parentheses then?
E squared.
X minus 1 squared. You add 1 to both sides. So we have x minus 1 quantity squared minus 3.
We're out of space.
Hey, you want to see something real cool before we go any further?
Yeah. So, we're gonna think for a minute.
That's vertex form of parabola, isn't it?
I don't know. Yeah.
Sure. It could
Text
be.
for what? So then you get to start the whole thing over again? Possibility.
I cannot look at you. Seriously. I'm sorry.
Did they at least give you ollies?
Oh, you did junction.
Anyway, so when you do this, you get x equals 1 plus or minus I root 3.
Yeah.
It is not very scary. You know what? We do have time. You might as well look at it.
No, that's fine. What are we supposed to be looking at?
Nah.
I want to work on my homework.
We have
You should
time.
give us homework already. We can have lots of time to work on it. I have.
What's this?
love
No.
this one.
Distance.
This is the one I go to every time. This is my go-to. This is my go-to. I know this by heart.
This is geometry.
What is this called?
Geometry.
It's a quadratic formula.
That is the best
Called
formula I've
geometry.
ever seen.
So that reminds me,
I love that formula.
I have using the quadratic formula is one of the easiest things that you guys have had in the past.
It takes time.
The only thing, it does take a little bit longer to go through.
Yeah.
That's why I like completing the square because it's faster. But the one thing that's nice about the quadratic formula that you might not know is what's called the discriminant. The discriminant is all the junk underneath the radical. It's all of this, b squared minus 4ac. That's called the discriminant. The discriminant allows you to know how many and what type of solutions you'll have, whether they're going to be 2 real solutions, 2 imaginary solutions, or 1 solution, or no solution. Excuse me, actually now we call that no solution is actually the imaginary. What happens here is that when you have the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, if that's positive, you can take the square root of it, correct?
Yep.
So if this is positive, you have 2 real solutions. Because you'll have like 6 plus or minus the square root of 8 all over 5. Something along those lines. It's just some crummy decimal, crummy answer. If b squared minus 4ac is negative, what do you think you're going to have?
1.
Ah, what's the square root of a negative now? Square root of a negative is imaginary. So if you have a negative value underneath the radical, you'll have two imaginary. Yeah, two unreal ones. You'll have two imaginary solutions. When you guys did this before, if it was negative, you'd say there was no solution. Now we know that that no solution was a lie. It was a farce.
Liars.
And then if b squared minus 4ac equals 0, you have one solution. And a lot of times people like freak out and they're like, what do you mean if it equals 0? How can it just be one solution? That just means that your quadratic lies on the x-axis. It touches it just one spot. That's it. That's all it means. Okay? That's all that means. Excuse me. That's really the only part that's new. I know that all of you guys have used the quadratic formula. I'm not going to go through a lot of it. It's just a matter of plucking out coefficients. Try not to do all of it at once with your calculator, and you won't be wrong. Okay? Especially when you have the b squared part, when you have negatives. Just be careful with that, because that's what you'll screw up. Make sure you throw it in parentheses. So you'll ask, one of the things they'll ask you, let me show you, is it'll add, oh, we just did this. If I look at this, x squared minus 6x plus 10, and I just want to know type and how many solutions. If I want to know type and how many solutions, all I'm going to do is label out, well, A is 1, B is negative 6, and C is 10. And I'm going to check what is b squared minus 4ac. So negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 10. What's negative 6 squared? 36. What's 4 times 10?
40.
So you have 36 minus 40, you get
Negative 4.
So you'll have 2 imaginary.
Not real.
Math.
Math. Yeah, exactly.
Nothing is real, but everything
That's
is
all.
Right. That's really all there is to it, guys. If you had to use the quadratic formula to finish out, to write out the full solutions, I know you guys have done that. We'll use this as an example. Remember, you know the Pop Goes the Weasel version?
No.
Ready?
I'm ready.
X equals negative
yeah.
b plus or minus square root. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. b squared minus 4ac all over 2x.
You used to say that last year.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So you can still write it out. Opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac 2a
Booyah.
over 2a. So what's the opposite of a negative 6? 6.
What are we doing?
I'm just filling out the rest of it. We already did the discriminant was negative 4. What's the square root of negative 4?
2i.
2i.
Yeah.
So I wind up with 6 plus or minus 2i over 2. And can I simplify that?
Yes.
Yeah.
In this case, we can simplify it further, and we wind up with 3 plus or minus I. And you're done. You just leave it like that. Okay. I know that all of you guys have used quadratic formula. It's not a difficult thing to do. Okay. So let's look at some problems in for tonight. Let me see if I got the right ones on here.
Two imaginary. We only get one. Doesn't this look nice? That gives
Let's see, 287, I want those, 47, yeah. Yeah,
Don't give us a lot.
yeah.
I got lots to do tonight.
Which one are we
We
on?
have a double practice. Yeah, we've got double practice.
Both of those, because these are just straightforward, nothing crazy here.
Both of them?
Yeah.
That's
8, 7.
Yeah, you guys will fly right through it.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Positive.
positive.
Wait, which ones did we have?
Okay.
Wait,
Those are the two, what, the top one is section 5.5. That's 5.5. This is 5.6.
Wait, so these are
Okay.
all ours?
These are all these problems I'm giving you here are odd numbers, so that way you can check your solutions. Okay. They're all odd problems. You can check. You'll check all your solutions. Like I said, they're the completing the square ones Work a little bit harder on those because I know that's new. Just remember, when that leading term coefficient is not 1, you got to divide everything by that. Okay? Also, I don't think I gave you a problem where B was odd. You will have B values that are odd.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Well, what's half of 5?
2.5.
Ah, 5 over 2. It's easier to keep it at that. And then I would square it. When you square a fraction, you get 25 over 4. Okay?
Ew.
Your calculator will do that for you.
If
You
I
put
don't
it in
forget
as a
my
fraction,
calculator.
and you square it, it'll come out with the
I forgot
fraction
my
square.
calculator.
Love
All right? Like I said, I did not give you the fraction one. Don't use decimals. Try to use fractions. Okay? I seriously think those shoes are bigger than what I would wear.
They're like,
They have nice soft ones. I don't know if they're sorry, it's just what it is.
are you judging?
I am judging, yes.
They're looking back.
Oh, is there like a contest?
I thought this, no.
I'm like judging you, yes.
This is a judge for you.